Hey, welcome everyone. This week we are going to talk about the gut brain axis or the gut brain connection and what it actually matters and has to do with health. If you go and you look at the research, honestly, it's been a massive boom over the past decade on gut health and really anything else gut and autoimmunity, gut and autism, gut and ADHD, gut and dementia. The list goes on and on and on. And we're hearing a lot of people talk about the gut brain axis, but I don't really think it's being talked about in the right way because when we look at the gut brain axis, it is a two-way street. Okay. It is a two-way street. So what happens in the gut impacts the brain. This is all I hear about from most people, but that's not it. Okay. What happens in the brain also impacts the gut. This is a bidirectional axis. So here to the gut, gut to here. So we're going to look at a little bit of the research. I really want you to understand this so you can get the most out of this. All right, let's see what we've got. All right, there we go. Can you see me? All right, so we're actually going to restart. Okay, so I was having some technological difficulties. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the gut-brain connection. Now, most people, if you listen, they talk about it as if it's a one-way street. So the gut impacting the brain. But is that really what it is? No, no, it's not. Okay. The brain can impact the gut. So it is a bidirectional, okay, it's two ways. So we're going to help you understand what's going on here. Now, my name is Dr. Spencer Zimmerman. I'm licensed as both a doctor of chiropractic. I have a diploma in chiropractic neurology, and I'm a nurse practitioner. I've helped people for over the past decade improve their health by taking a whole approach to health, which is not just loving the brain, because you can't love the brain if you don't understand what influences the brain. So here we go. Now, when we look at the research, this is called microbiota gut-brain axis. And what you're going to see, and we're going to break this down, but we see the gut microbiome through metabolites, neurotransmitters, and hormones ultimately impacts the brain. We can see issues from autism to anxiety to depression. We can also see changes in just performance and motivation and neurodegenerative conditions. Next, we look here at this schematic. This looks at brain, gut, dysbiosis. Now, you may be wondering, what is dysbiosis? Dysbiosis is an imbalance of the gut bacteria. So if you look here in purple, that would be a healthy gut bacteria. Now, when you've got an imbalance, this ultimately can create issues, not only within the gut, but within the brain. one of the biggest mistakes people make is they say, well, I don't have any digestive issues, so therefore I'm going to assume that my brain must be good. And this really isn't true. So what's been researched? Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression, anxiety, neurodevelopmental disorders, right? ADHD, autism. If we go outside of the brain, we see autoimmune conditions and much more where they've looked at the impact of the gut microbiome on health. So please make sure you subscribe. If you haven't, follow me, ask questions because this is for you. And I just want you to be able to take better control of your health and get the answers you need. So now that we understand that having alterations in the gut microbiome can lead to a lot of issues, let's step back. Okay. And we're just going to go big picture here. All right. So from a mental health perspective, we're going to look at the right side. How many of us does this look familiar? You've got your Burger King, your Wendy's, your McDonald's, you've got your donuts, you've got your ultra processed food. Well, this ultra processed food does not just impact our gut. So ultimately, when you think about what you're eating, this is more like a chemistry equation or chemistry reaction. So let me explain what I mean here. So ultimately, it's this chemistry equation, right? So food intake goes to your gut, which then breaks it down into things you are going to absorb, right? So because you want to absorb your nutrients. It's also going to break it down into beneficial. So we'll put benefit, but then we'll also put damaging. Because the food you eat determines, are you going to get beneficial or damaging byproducts? So we need to make sure that we really understand this. And this is why when we look at this concept here, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, you ultimately get changes in the composition of your gut bacteria. This leads to issues that you can be dealing with, right? And you get what's called lipopolysaccharide. This is an inflammatory molecule that goes up. You get something else, TMAO, trimethylamine and oxide. This can actually be measured in lab work. And as a result, short chain fatty acids and other things go down. But if you're eating healthy, right, get your veggies, get your good fiber, get your good meat, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, olive oil, stuff like that, right? Even supplements, fermented foods in here. This helps to quiet down the amount of inflammation and it helps to diversify your gut microbiome. As you diversify your gut microbiome, guess what? Not only is your gut healthier, but your brain becomes healthier as well. So this is where we've got to keep viewing the body as a whole. The body is not isolated pieces. So once again, if you've got questions, let me know. So if you have questions here, let me know, but I'm also going to keep going. Now, this is in brain injury. So I do treat a lot of people who have concussions, who've had brain injuries, who have had strokes, and their gut can ultimately get thrown for a loop. Now, you have other things beyond brain injuries that ultimately create issues within the brain. For example, long COVID is known to basically cause a brain injury as well. It's just not from a physical insult, it's from an immune inflammatory insult. So when we look at a healthy brain here, okay, so we want the brain to be healthy. Proper brain function, as we see, GI motility and secretion. So we're going to dive into this a little bit. When your brain is healthy, here is what happens. You start your digestion with your brain the second you smell food, right? The second you see it, you start getting saliva production. So your brain gets stimulated, sends signal for saliva and everything to the mouth. You start breaking down food because of saliva juices and because of chewing. This then sends it to the gut, so stomach. There you should have really acidic environment. You get digestive enzymes also through the brain, signals digestive enzyme release from like the pancreas, which then makes its way to the gut as well. You break down the foods, and then guess what? From the gut, it gets passed to your small intestine, which finishes the digestion and starts absorbing it. And then ultimately, the rest of it's done in the large intestine. Now, the large intestine is where most of the bacteria should live. And this is where byproducts, which we will talk about, are really made and dealt with. So let me know if you have any questions so far. Now, so when we look at this, proper motility, you're able to maintain your stomach lining. Gut's healthy, produces short chain fatty acids, neurotransmitters, and gets the immune system under good control. Now, in a brain injury, what happens? You get inflammation, you get damp, so damage associated molecular proteins. Okay, this causes inflammation, causes the body to go into a stress response. Ultimately, it changes the flora, which leads to intestinal permeability, bacteria, alterations, inflammation, and it's this recurrent loop. Now, I'm going to what happens with intestinal permeability, otherwise known as leaky gut. So with leaky gut, okay, leaky gut, intestinal permeability, these are used interchangeably. Okay, this is starting to become much more accepted medically. Even though it's been around, I've been taught about it the entire time I've been doing this. So over a decade, others have been doing it longer. But ultimately, when you look at your intestines, you've got your gut lining. Okay, there's basically these little pores, which you may not even be able to see this, which let things to move in and out of your intestines. Now, only things that are really well broken down and digested should transit. And then you have immune cells outside that will sample stuff. But when you have a leaky gut, such as from a brain injury, from long COVID, from stress, from insomnia, antibiotics, and other things like that, this becomes open bigger. And so now you start getting stuff that should be going through the intestines, and it comes down here and it enters your systemic circulation, which can ultimately end up in the brain. So if you're dealing with depression, anxiety, brain injury, stroke, long COVID, it's not sufficient to just look at the brain. You really need to make sure the gut's healthy too. But at the same token, if you're dealing with any of those, looking at the gut is important. But if you don't look at the brain, you're also missing the other pieces of the puzzle. Now, we're going to save that for a different conversation, but I just want to make sure you're following me on this. And then we'll go back and show you some different pictures of what this looks like. So here is leaky gut. Okay, so normal, right? You see things look nice and good. You've got everything doing its job right. Vagus nerve is healthy. Lots of people are hearing about the vagus nerve. Well, healthy vagus nerve is anti-inflammatory, as we see here. When there's inflammation, post-brain injury, other things, Vagus nerve is not able to do its job. This ultimately leads to the production of inflammatory cytokines from within the immune system. But then the other thing you see here, you see nutrient malabsorption. You see increased intestinal permeability. So you actually get pathogens can enter in and create issues, leading to problems with motility, often constipation, but it can be diarrhea. But now you're also getting excessive dumping of catecholamines, which is your epinephrine, norepinephrine, your stress hormones, and cortisol. This is not good. But now you may be wondering, okay, so you've told us what happens when the gut's not healthy. What can we actually do about it? So as we talked about here, changing your nutrition is going to be a really, really big player in getting things to a better spot. But I also want to go in and focus a little bit on something called short chain fatty acids. Okay, so when you eat foods, you get good things. Your bacteria produce short chain fatty acids. Now, the short chain fatty acids are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. What do these do? Well, they come in here. Once again, they're produced within the colon, but then they can enter in the systemic circulation. And what do they do though? Right? They come in here and they help to maintain blood-brain barrier function. They help with reducing inflammation in the brain. They help to improve signaling and connections within the brain to make the brain healthier. So getting your short chain fatty acids good is actually really, really essential and something that needs to be done. Now you may be wondering, like, well, what are things I can do? You know, I don't know. Well, when you do short chain fatty acids, this comes from polyphenols, polysaccharides, oligosaccharides. As you eat this, your gut bacteria breaks it down. You get an increase of your beneficial bacteria. Okay, you've got all these different families. For example, you can supplement with Akkermansia directly, which will improve your short chain fatty acid levels. Even Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, others like that. And as we see, when you increase your short chain fatty acid levels, you get more good byproducts. You get energy for your colon, but also for your brain. Also, help with intestinal motility, and lastly, reduce inflammation. So you can hit multiple things, right? So this is a really, really big deal. All right, so last, I just want to tie this all together. So we've talked about gut-brain axis being a two-way street, okay? So your brain impacts your gut impacts your brain. Today, we've really focused on what happens from the gut to the brain, even though on another day, we really do need to talk about the brain and the gut because, hey, it's all connected. And best health comes from treating the body as a whole and not as individual pieces. The more complex cases don't get better when you separate them in these little pieces. But when you deal with the dysbiosis, the inflammatory response, neurotransmitters, which once again get improved as you improve the health of the gut, your short chain fatty acids come in, they stimulate the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve helps with anti-inflammatory output. And now when the brain fires back down, it's given some good anti-inflammatory benefits both ways. And then as we talked about, you do get the short chain fatty acids, which help to reduce the inflammation, modulate the immune system, blood-brain barrier function, also the intestinal barrier function. It changes immune system function, helps with neurotransmitter production, such as serotonin, and ultimately changes what's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, so the HPA axis, which is routinely implicated when there's chronic stress or depression. So, if you've got questions, let me know. I know we've covered a lot, but at the end of the day, what are we looking at, right? When you have a healthy gut-brain axis, what does life look like? Well, it's life where bloating, distension, constipation, diarrhea, food sensitivities, joint pain, and many other things improve and do well. But what happens if you have an unhealthy gut-brain axis, right? So if gut-brain axis isn't healthy, motivation, energy, brain fog, mood, concentration. But not only just all brain stuff, but joint pain. Get lots of people who come in with joint pain, issues with their gut-brain axis, and so much more. So that's where we are going to leave it at for now with the gut-brain axis being a bidirectional. We focus primarily on the gut to the brain. In future videos, we will go over the brain to the gut because the best health is seen when it's done together. Once again, I'm Dr. Z. I'm licensed both a doctor of chiropractic with a diploma in chiropractic neurology, as well as a nurse practitioner. And I've made it my focus and mission to help people improve their overall brain and body health, not one or the other, because in the complex cases, you can't pick your favorite. Each part of the body influences the other, and it's time we start addressing it as such.